So last week, Tana dropped their local MCP, and this is something the community has been waiting for a long time for. And honestly, I've been so excited to test this out over the last few days. Now, if you have no clue what an MCP is, here's what this means. Any AI system that you use, Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, can now connect directly to your workspace. It can read your nodes, it can see your full system, it can even create things in Tana for you. So I've been playing with it since it was released last week, and this is the first time that having an AI chief of staff has actually felt real to me. I've been doing my weekly planning, and Claude already knows my goals, my projects, what I was focused on last week because it has access to everything in Tana. I'm brain dumping random ideas and they're ending up in the right places without me having to organize anything. I'm Ev, and I help knowledge professionals turn their scattered note systems into a personal AI knowledge system where everything works together, so you can move faster with more flow and focus. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to set up the MCP with Tana. And if you're not technical, don't worry, it's way easier than it looks. Number two, I'm going to show you how to train it so it actually understands your system. And honestly, this is what most people skip. Without this, the MCP just feels like a dumb intern who has no idea how to get around your Tana. And then I'm going to give you 5 workflows that are going to make you believe that you have a real chief of staff working for you. Now, before we jump in, if you don't have time to watch endless YouTube tutorials and you just want to build a high-performing digital workspace that turns your scattered notes into a system that just works, then check out my Tana Fast Track course. It will get you up and running in Tana fast. First, you'll learn all the fundamentals of Tana with the Tana Foundations modules. Next, you'll choose from our 6 core workflow templates that are just plug and play. There's not 86 super tags to deal with. You choose the templates you need to customize your workflow. You also have our TFT community to ask questions and get direct help from me, plus a load of other resources. Now, over 700 people have already taken Tana Fast Track and loved it. So if you want to get on the Tana Fast Track, I will leave a link in the description below. All right, so let's talk about setting up your MCP. So the way that we're going to do this is I'm going to show you 2 ways, using Claude Desktop or through the terminal with using VS Code. Now, if that means nothing to you, don't worry. I'm going to show you everything. It really is not as hard as it seems. Now, you will need a Claude account to work with this, okay? If you don't have one, you're going to come up against limits very, very quickly. So personally, I have a Claude Max account just because of the way that I use AI and my work. It justifies it, right? A pro account can work. It's about $20 US a month. And I feel like the more that I use Claude Code, I use MCPs and all of this kind of thing, the more that it just makes sense to me to actually have a max account for this, right? So first things first is we have to get Tana ready for the MCP. So the way to do that, and by the way, you can always just come here to the Tana docs. It will give you everything that you need. And one thing that I would say is if anything breaks, if it just doesn't seem to be working, I copy the docs into Claude and I say, help me, right? I can't work out how to set this up. What do I do? That kind of thing, right? So first things first, we'll go over to Tana, right? You need to turn the capability on for the MCP. So that's up here in settings. And what you want to do is come to Tana Labs and you want to make sure that the local API MCP server is on. Right. Once you've done that, we're cooking. It will reload your account. Okay. So it needs to reload. And then the one thing I found that made the option show up is to actually quit Tana altogether after the reload, start it up again. And then you need to come here to options and go to local API settings and then tick this box, Claude Code. That is all you need to do to get Tana set up so that the MCP server is on. Now, one thing to note that this is a local server. So you have to have Tana open and you have to be using Claude on the same computer, right? You can't just grab your phone and start talking to Tana. It's not that kind of MCP yet, but it does work when you're at your desktop. Okay, so I think this is a great first start to just have access via an MCP to be able to do stuff in Tana through AI. So once you've done that, then we need to move on to setting up our environment for AI to work with, right? So next thing, there's 2 ways that we can do this, right? If you use Claude Code, you can auto configure this, okay? And this is what we've done here. right? So we've set up Tana to work with Claude Code. Now, if you were setting this up in Terminal, you would go and do your thing, install Claude, install the MCP, do that kind of thing. I'm not actually going to do that. I'm going to show you how I use Visual Studio, right? So essentially this is a coding environment. I am not a coder. I just use it to talk to Claude, okay? Somebody asked me this morning, why use Claude Code? Should I use Claude Cowork? Should I just use Claude, right? And I think one of the things that I've seen the difference in using Claude Code compared to just, let's say, being here in Claude and asking a question is that Claude Code tends to be able to kind of, and I think it's just the way that it's created, because it's created to code. It will create a plan for me. It will then go, and Claude Code can actually do things on my computer. So it can create files. It can then bring those files into Tana. So there's a lot of different things that it can do that you can't necessarily just do through a conversation in Claude. Okay. But essentially how I use this in VS Code is a free tool that you can download. And then what I do is I came in here to the extensions in VS Code and I just looked for Claude. Okay. You're looking for the Claude Code for VS Code extension. You want to make sure it's the one by Anthropic. Usually it would say install, like these ones. I've already installed it. So click install. And then what you see is a little Claude button at the top of all these windows, and you click on it. And because all we did was turn on the MCP here in Tana and do essentially this auto configure, it just works, right? So as soon as I open this, it just works and I'm talking straight to Tana, right? So that's a really quick and easy way. And I really like this environment. I love working in it. And this is like my main way of working with Claude now in this environment, right? And talking to Tana. So that's kind of one way, right? VS Code. If you're already like a terminal person, like if you know how to use this and you're comfortable with it, then definitely go ahead and use terminal and use Claude in the terminal. I am not, and that's why I'm not showing you how to set it up that way. Okay, there's probably a million other people who could explain how to do that in a much better way than I could. Okay, so that's VS Code, completely separate to Claude Desktop and using it in Claude Desktop. So if you want to set this up in Claude Desktop, which I also have, by the way, so I can use it in either. What you want to do is you want to add this. So ignore all of this, Codex CLI, by the way, if you're using Codex, the new ChatGPT, this is how you set this up in Codex. If you're using Gemini CLI, same thing. This is what we want to get to, which is Claude Desktop. Okay. So what we need to do is in our Claude Desktop, how we need to add this is we need to go to settings. Okay. And in settings, you'll find this developer tag. Okay. And if I go to connectors, you will see that I've got Tana local dev here. Okay. So it's configured. But the way to do that is to come in here to developer and you want to come here to edit config. What that does when you click that, okay, and I'm on a Mac, is it will open up your Claude folder and open up this Claude desktop config JSON, okay? Again, just don't get overwhelmed by this, but what we want to do is we want to open this. So I usually just go open with and just go text editor, right? That's enough for right now. All right, so now I've already got Tana set up here, but if this was blank like this, all I would want to do is come here, copy this and paste it in. Okay, and then save that file, and then you're pretty much up and running from there. Now, if you've already got something in the file, right? So I already had the Readwise MCP server in my access file, right? So all I did was I just come here, copy everything that's in the file, come into Claude, and I say, I need to set up a new MCP server in Claude Desktop. I already have an MCP in the folder. Here is the code. Here is the new code I need to add. So we come here, we grab our new code. Can you help me structure the code in the file, right? So just like anytime you're thinking, I don't know how to do this, just ask Claude to do it. And so once you've done that and you've saved your config file, you can just close that up. Now, sometimes you may need to close Claude and open it again, like quit it. But if you come back to your settings, you should then now see in your connectors, you should see Tana, and then also kind of here in developers. Okay. So that is the setup. Okay. So now you can literally come in here to your chats. You can chat here, right? You can chat using Cowork, or you can chat using Code, or within the desktop, or like I said, you can use the VS Code setup. Okay. So let's just be in chat first. I'll show you quickly. Let's say I have to remember to buy milk, right? So, okay, so you can do something like this, send it off, and it's going to connect to your Tana workspace and then add that into Tana. So what it's doing now is it's checking your Tana workspace, right? And it wants to get your calendar nodes. So the Tana MCP has a few, we call them tools, right? And one of those is get calendar node. And so what this is asking you here, basically Claude is asking you permission to run this tool. And so what I would do is, and you're going to see a lot of these pop up as you start using Tana. So you can either deny it if you don't want it to do it, right? Now, we're not going to do that one. You can allow once, which means like this instance, yes, go for it. And I would just suggest that as you start working with the MCP is just allow once, just so you can watch it work, watch it understand what it's doing and start to trust that it's actually working the right way. Then once you're kind of comfortable, you can then go always allow, and then Claude will just run with Tana and do stuff, right? So we're just going to go allow once. And that's going to look for our day node, okay? And then we'll see what it does next. Okay, so now it's saying it wants to import Tana paste. So essentially it's wanting to import this into my day page and buy milk on the way home. So we're going to go allow once. And then now it's done. So if we head over to Tana, we can now see that there is a node on the day page that says buy milk on the way home. Now, most of us would want a tag added or something like that. Okay, so it's kind of just basic, right? And it will do basic things like that, but it can also, and I'm going to show you how to make it a little bit more smarter. Okay, so essentially here, I'm going to say this needs to be tagged with the action tag and given a date of today. Anytime you need to add tasks, this is the way to do it. Okay, so part of using the MCP is kind of training it on what your system looks like and how you actually work in Tana. And, you know, if we think about it, if you had an assistant coming in, you know, a real assistant coming in to help you in your Tana, and you said, hey, can you add this as a reminder to my day page? They might add it in a number of different ways because you can use Tana in so many different ways. So essentially, the first few weeks, the first few times that you're using the MCP with Tana, you're essentially having to do a bit of training. So we're just going to say this. And because we're in this same conversation, it already has the context. So I can just say, hey, that just needs to be tagged with the action tag. Okay. And now it's going to fix it. Right. So what it's doing here is it's going to list all the tags and then it's looking for the action tag. Okay. And we're running into some problems, right? So I don't see an action tag in my workspace. And I'm going to say it's called action. Okay, so now it's going to do a different search, right? So let's allow. And we just keep pressing allow just so that it continues to work. Okay, so after some troubleshooting, finally, we have, if we come here, I've got a new task that's been tagged and the date has been set to today. Now, there was some trouble that we had here, right? So Tana was saying, hey, I can't find this action super tag. And, you know, I said, check the agenda node. There's a whole lot of things tagged action. It couldn't find it, right? So essentially, this is what using the MCP feels like when you first get started. It feels kind of dumb and like it doesn't know Tana at all. So the first thing that I've done with Tana is actually got it to map my whole workspace and map my system, right? It's really, really important because otherwise you're going to get really frustrated very, very quickly because it's doing things that it just shouldn't be doing, right? So in order to do that, I would not use chat for that, okay? I'd either use Cowork or code, okay? So I'm going to jump over into VS Studio and show you how I actually do this. And this is one of the very first things that I did with Tana, and it absolutely upgraded the whole experience. So put something like this in. So this is a prompt that I used. Mine was a little bit less articulate, but essentially you want to say something like this. We are going to start working together in Tana with the MCP. First things first, I would like you to get up to speed on my system, my schema, the super tags I use, how the system is put together. Familiarize yourself and create a system map that you can access anytime you need to do something in Tana. Then create a skill for yourself called Tana Copilot. So essentially what we're doing is, and I'll talk about skills in more detail a bit later in the video, but a skill is basically a little workflow that Claude can use that tells it kind of the instructions, the SOPs, that kind of thing. And skills are something that you will start to create a whole bunch of so that essentially we're kind of like keep training our AI to work with Tana. So once you do that, this is the third time I've actually showed how to do this. So it's going to be, it might be a bit weird, but essentially you see that it creates a to-do list for itself, right? So it's going to explore the Tana workspace structure. It's going to catalog all the super tags. It's going to map their relationships, and it's going to create a system map document. Now, I actually already have all of this, but essentially I just want to show you what it does here. It pulls your main workspace in. Okay, then it will look for tags. Now, I have a lot of tags. I have over 300 of them. One of the things I did with Tana, and I'll show you kind of how to do this, is I actually did a tag cleanup, and I'll show you kind of how to do that if your system's a bit messy. So it's kind of only counted 175 tags. I know I have over 300, but we'll go with it. Okay, it's like looking through all these tag schemas. So it's like doing a whole lot of things, right? And now it's still getting schemas here. So there's some errors happening, but I didn't even really look at that. I just let it keep going. And you can see a whole lot of things happen. Like it's reading stuff, it's grepping stuff, whatever that means. Like, guys, I don't know code. I don't know anything. It's doing these bash commands. Like, I just let it do its thing, right? And so that's what I mean by you don't have to kind of be technical. You just have to let it do its thing, and it will. So we're going to just let it go and see what it comes back with. Okay, so it's done mapping the relationships between the tags. Now it's on to creating the system map. So it's kind of reading some skills I already have. It's probably going to get a bit confused here just because we already have a system map and a whole skill, but it's just reading it all. Okay, so it's realized that there's already a Tana Copilot skill and the map already exists. So if yours doesn't exist, it will start to create it. Okay, I just want to show you the process just so you kind of understand how powerful this can be. Yeah, and so see here, it says like, okay, these both exist, like past me has done some work, but based on my fresh deep dive, there are significant gaps, right? So it's already picking up stuff that it didn't pick up last time. And so it's going to update those maps, and then we'll be able to work with Tana. Okay, so what we end up with is Tana kind of doing something which is updating its documents, right? So what you can see here is the old Tana system map, and what you can see here is what it wants to change to, okay? And so essentially, I just let it change the doc, right? So if there was something I needed it, I could read through everything and do that, but I'm not going to do that, guys. I'm just going to go yes, right? It's going to just update the system map, and then it's going to update the Copilot skill, and it's going to ask you the same question if you want to update the skill. All right, so we're going to update the skill, and then we're done, right? So this is the very first thing that you should absolutely do with your Claude to be able to, like, honestly, if you don't want to get frustrated every single time, right? Otherwise, what it's doing is it's guessing, it's opening up your workspace and your schema every single time, trying to understand it. Like it's like starting from scratch every time. So now we have, and if we have a look here, I've got the system map, right? And this is comprehensive, right? It's a big doc. I have not one time have I actually look like it created anything in this doc. And then it's also got this skill which kind of tells it, quick actions, core capabilities. Like it's essentially my Tana Copilot skill, right? Very cool. So by the way, you can actually also create skills in the desktop. So in this conversation that we just had here about Buy the Milk, there was a lot of problems that came up. And so all I do is I say, are you able to create a skill for yourself so we don't run into the same issues next time? It says, yes, great idea. And so essentially what it did is create this skill here. And essentially it's just instructions for AI. That's all it's doing, right? And so now anytime I ask it to create a task, it should know how to do that. So all you have to do here is copy to your skills, and that will add it to your skills, and you don't have to do anything else. The next time you talk to Tana, it knows how to create a task. So let me get into some demos. The first one is find all my notes on the topic X, right? So this is something that, if you've got a lot of notes, if you do a lot of thinking, you're like, what am I doing? So essentially here is how to do that. So I have a workshop that I'm doing tomorrow in my College of Knowledge community called Mastering the Day Page. And I want to find all of the notes that I have in Tana that are around the day page methodology, using the day page, that kind of thing. So I'm going to ask Claude to go and find those. All right. So, and again, I'm just talking to Claude. I'm giving it context. I'm saying, hey, this is what I'm doing tomorrow, right? I'm doing a workshop. I'm mastering the day page. Now, by the way, I've already done this work. The workshop is already created, but for the sake of this, we're just going to go with this. So I've told it what to look for, right? So in my system, Spark Notes and Atomic Ideas, actually they're called Signature Ideas. So let's just change that, are the two kind of notes that I use to think about and think through ideas. So I'm asking it to look through both of those and then add that node on my day page so I can go and explore those. So we're just going to go here. And what you'll see happening is, again, Claude is going to possibly create a to-do list, because that's what it does like to do that. And then it's going to go and search in my whole workspace, right? So it's listing the workspace. It's looking for Spark notes and signature ideas, right? So it's getting a list of tags. It's getting a list of calendar nodes. It's doing all sorts of things, right? It's found the tags, right? Now it's doing a search. So it just goes to work, right? And this is something that I could, like, if I was just at the start of a project, I could walk away, go and have coffee, come back, and hopefully on my day page, I'll have something that I can look at. And so you can see here now it's finding some notes, right? So the day page framework, what notes to keep on your day page versus in your library. So there's a whole lot of different things here. I'm like, oh, okay, there's some great content here. So this is going to keep working. I'm going to see what it creates at the end. All right. And so now it's kind of, pulled some things, and it's going to compile the research on today's day page. So we will let it do that. If we come over here into Tana, we'll see that come up momentarily. Here we go. So now I've got my workshop prep. So if I zoom in, I can see all of the references, and it's actually, pulled those up, so I can actually open those and have a look at them, see what's in them, and I could start to actually kind of compile. It's even given me some themes for the workshop that I can go with. So this is a great way to kind of use the MCP, like, hey, find all my notes on X. Right? Now, one of the other things that is often hard in Tana is actually creating your system, creating dashboards, creating search nodes, all of that kind of thing. All of that can be solved with the MCP, right? So let's say, for instance, you could just ask it to create a search, right? So let's say, can you create a search on my day page in Tana that finds all the tasks that I need to do today, right? So it will go, it knows how to create searches, it knows all of the search parameters, all of those kinds of things, and it's going to go and create that search for you. So now, whereas before you might go into Slack and you might say, hey, how can I create this search? Now you can just ask AI to do it. Okay, so now it's done. Let's go over and we'll have a look. So if I open this up, you can see, okay, there's some actions in here, but not all of these actions are for today. Some are for the week, okay? And I've also noticed that when I come in here, it's actually picked up this random super tag, which is timed task, rather than my action super tag. So in that case, I'm just going to go back and tell it, right? The tag you should be using is action. Also, I noticed that I can also see task due this week, which I don't want to see. And then the other thing that I want to do is, because, today's tasks are great, but what about tasks that are overdue? So what if I want to add that in? So let's do that. I also want to be able to see tasks that are in the past, right? And it will just go and fix up its work, right? So it's like, it's a first pass and it probably could have done a bit better, but essentially it's just going to go and fix that up, and then we'll be able to find it. All right, so it's done doing that. So let's check this new one. So if I come in here, I should just see today, and then I'm also seeing things that are old, right? Which actually I forgot about a lot of these tasks. So this is a good reason to actually create this. Now, so one of the limitations is, it can't add this to your content template for the day page, but if you wanted to, you could just come in here to your day page, and if you want to configure your template, you can always move this in here, and that would add it to your day page. Okay. Now, essentially, we can keep going along this particular line. So you can create individual searches like that, but you can create whole dashboards. So let's create a dashboard for our tasks. So we're going to do this. All right. So now what I've asked it to do is create a dashboard for my task system on my home node. So essentially, I just want to see these things: due today, due this week, overdue, incoming, orphan, right? And I've kind of given it some details on what incoming and orphan might mean, right? And so we're just going to send that off, and then we're going to see what AI creates for us. So we can see here that it's looked through the tag schema. It's also created my IDs and then also kind of put the logic together. And then now it says it's done with the task dashboard. So let's go up to our home node and have a look. See, I've already tested this, but we can see here, I've got everything that's due today, right? Now you can see here that there's still some week 6 things in here, so it needs to fix that up. Everything that's due this week, things that are overdue, incoming tasks, and orphan tasks, right? This is like magic, right? Being able to just tell AI what you want to see And it's not just a task. You can create a project dashboard. You can create an ideas dashboard. You could talk to AI about essentially how you want to build your system, and it can go and do it, right? Now from here, I might just remind it that in today, I don't want to see this week. It'll just update that. But essentially all these are just created, right? It just works so well. All right. So we have covered 2 demos so far, right? Find all my notes on X and create dashboard or create searches, right? The third thing I want to show you is how to actually just do a big brain dump and then just have AI organize that in Tana for you, right? Now, I've been doing this every single morning. I used to do this through the voice on the Tana mobile app, and then I had a command in Tana that would organize it for me. I have found that just the MCP does it so much better. I don't have to hand hold it so much, right? So essentially what I do is I use Whisperflow on my computer and I just talk. So I'm going to do a brain dump right now, and then we're going to see Tana just clean it up and organize it all for me. All right, Chad. Now, by the way, Chad is the name of my AI chief of staff, so I call him Chad. So this morning, things that are on my mind, right? There's an email in my inbox from somebody who's a fast track question that I need to get back to. So you need to just let us know and how did daily check-ins, those things like what are some chief of staff workflows that we can actually then just kind of really go into. So if you can create all of that, that'd be great. All right, so that's my brain dump. You can see like there's a whole lot of different things here, right? So there's some tasks that I need to do. There's some docs I need to create, some Spark ideas that I've had. So like literally I'm just like talking through everything that's in my head in the morning, and I'm just going to upload it and then it's going to start working. Okay, so morning brain dump received. Let me get all of this into Tana for you, right? So it's like, oh my gosh, my assistant is just working for me. So it's going to create tasks, Spark ideas, project, and outline docs, right? So it's going to go in, it's going to look at its Tana Copilot skill, so it kind of knows what it's doing, and it's going to get everything into Tana. Now it's getting today's node. Okay, and something interesting is happening here, okay? So it can already see, because I've already actually done this brain dump, but it can already see that I've created a new chief of staff curriculum, right, with some thinking in it. And then it already knows that I have an AI chief of staff course or product. So it's find that. So it's like, oh, I better link that to the project. So there's some good stuff that it's kind of like picking up that I don't even have to think about, right? So now it's kind of creating these tasks, creating the Spark ideas, creating the project. Okay. And then it's going to create this outline doc. And it's going to create it as a doc connected to the project. And one of the reasons it's going to do that is because it knows in the skill, my Tana Copilot skill, that in a doc, it needs to be connected into a project or a knowledge collection or something like that. So it's kind of all the things that I've been teaching it, it's learning and it kind of knows what to do, right? So essentially this is like me, my boss, when I was a chief of staff, used to call me every morning and say, hey, here's what's in my head. And I used to have to organize it for them. Now I do the same, but just with AI, right? So let's have a look on the day page and see what is happening here. Okay. So we've got reply to the fast track email, upload office hour session recordings. We've got some Spark notes. We've got a project, and then we've got the updated outline MCP. And I'm like, I did not even talk through any of this, but here we go. Is like a whole update to the course is right here in the chief of staff course update outline, which is like pretty amazing. Now, one thing I did notice is these tasks are not tagged. So we just go back and say, I noticed the tasks were not tagged with action. Can you make, right? But essentially, imagine this. Imagine every morning just saying, hey, I've got to get stuff out of my head. And it can literally be anything, right? You can just tell it what is in your brain, and AI is going to go ahead and know your Tana workspace and then be able to organize everything for you. This feels to me like a massive, massive upgrade, right? This to me is, we are no longer going to work in our knowledge bases and in our notes organizing things, but literally we can talk and then AI can actually create stuff. So it's actually updated the actions. Okay. It's added them to today and I'm all good to go for the morning. Now, following on from the morning brain dump, One of the other things that I have been able to do is I have connected my Gmail through an MCP to Claude Code as well. So now not only can Claude Code talk to Tana, but it can also talk to my Gmail. I have done this through the Zapier MCP. So I use Zapier, and you can essentially go to mcp.zapier.com, sign up for an account. I do use Zapier, so I pay for it each month, but essentially I can connect over 8,000 apps through MCPs to Claude Code, right? So these are all the apps that I have set up, right? Google Sheets, YouTube, Thrivecart, Circle, Airtable, Google Calendar, Gmail, right? And I just keep adding new ones every day because I think, oh, I just want to keep working with my tools, right? So essentially, because I've done that, now I can actually do a workflow like this, right? All right, so essentially what I'm saying is I want to check all my emails that came in yesterday. Let's see if there's anything to action. Add that to Tana, and then list anything you think would be an interesting read, and I'll tell you if we should add it to Tana, right? So now what it's going to do, it's going to use its Zapier MCP and check my Gmail from yesterday. Let me pull up yesterday's emails, right? With Tana, I've kind of like allowed Claude Code just to go for its life. With the Zapier ones, I'm still kind of just, kind of pressing yes each time, just because I just want to understand what it's doing and that kind of thing. Essentially, like searching through my Gmail inbox is probably something it can do every time without me having to press yes. But sending an email is probably something that I want to click the button on. And you can see that essentially it's just searching my inbox for anything, between the dates, right? Okay, so here we've got some actionable stuff, right? So I've got a fast track course question, which I did already know. So I'm going to want to add that in, right? There's Tana Knowledge Exchange week 1 that's happening tomorrow. I don't really need to do anything that is not actionable. And then there's some Fathom meeting recaps, but they're not actually actionable either, right? So it's going to add the fast track reply as a task to Tana, since that's the only one that actually needs you to do something, right? So it should add that in, okay, reply. Again, it's really struggling with this action. So we're going to do something after this just to make sure that it works properly. But then it's going to go ahead and then pull up all the other kind of things that it thinks, hey, this is kind of interesting, right? So there's something from Every, there's something from Nate's Substack. I'm not interested in OpenClaw. Marie Pullen sent me a message, something else, AI chat added to OS. Okay, so I'm just going to say here, look, there's not anything really like super interesting, but let's say this Maven one. That Maven one looks interesting. Can you add a task to check it out? Right? So essentially it's like, oh, okay, that looks like something that I might want to check out. And so it's going to do that. Okay. Again, it's like, why is it adding it to the inbox? Okay. So it'll just move it. And if we go here, we should see it here. Right? So see how others are teaching. It's even got the URL so I can get to it easy. Now, I want to fix this action because it's not tagging anything. So just going to give it some extra instructions here. It will go through and it will rectify that. That's no worries, right? So it's going to just go through and fix that. Okay, so both of those are fixed now, right? And now we're going to fix Claude. Okay, so I'm going to say, please go and update any skills that you need so that you don't keep making that action mistake, right? So it's just like, essentially I'm saying, go and make sure that we don't run into this again. Because if you notice, just during those last few sessions, it just kept happening. I'm like, okay, right? So it'll just go and sort itself out, right? And then it should just kind of work from there and just tell it what it's done, okay? So always tag tasks with action. Right? So easy. All right. So let's talk about the final workflow, which is actually doing any kind of weekly planning workflow. Okay. So essentially, I'm not going to run my full weekly planning workflow, but I will do a video upcoming on the channel where I'm actually doing a weekly planning session because it's always easier to watch. But essentially what I do is what I did this week is I said, hey, we've got to start a weekly planning session. Okay. And one of the things that I did is I put together a yearly planning doc and a quarterly planning doc, and both of those live in Tana. And so essentially I just say, hey, we need to start a weekly planning session, reference my yearly and quarterly planning just so you have context on what's important. Then I say, find any overdue tasks, anything I didn't do last week, that kind of thing. And also here's everything that's in my head that needs to get done this week. So I do a big brain dump. And what that does is it kind of gets context. It then kind of pulls in anything that's overdue, and it also gets everything out of my head From all of that, then we start a weekly planning session and says, okay, here's everything that I've got for you, right? And from there, it starts to then work with you to organize priorities, what's really important, what's not important, all of those kinds of things. And so what it ended up doing for me is kind of like really highlighting how much I try and fit into my week. And essentially, I probably fit in too much. So we had to trade off, right? Ev, you're just not going to get this stuff done. And that's what I want a chief of staff to do, right? I don't want my chief of staff to be kind to me and let me do anything. I want it to push back hard. So that was a really interesting session. So I'm just going to put on the screen the prompt that I used, and you can go ahead and kind of use that. But essentially what that allows me to do is then update Chad on my progress. So this is something that actually I did do this morning. So I did a bit of a brain dump. I said, Chad, had a bit of a bad day yesterday, right? I was not focused and I didn't get the things that I needed to get done, right? And I just explained what happened during the day. I essentially just described my day and said, I don't know what's going wrong. I know the important things I should be doing. I'm not getting to them, blah, 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 blah. I just output it. And because it already has context on what my yearly goals are, what my quarterly goals are, my theme for the year, my theme for this year is praxis, which is taking action. So it has all of this stuff already loaded, and it knows kind of what's important for the week. So what it did is actually say, okay, here's what actually happened yesterday to you, right? You already know the answer, but I'm going to name it precisely. I actually didn't know the answer, but I'm okay, you didn't have a focus problem. You had a resistance problem, right? You had two big things on your list, and both are high stakes creative output, and they require you to sit down and commit and do all of that. And that's where the resistance lives, right? And this was eye-opening for me. I was essentially it's kind of really calling me out, right? And it's so what did you do instead? You chased productive feeling side quests. And that is exactly what I did. And, something here was just this really stood out to me. You felt productive because you were building things, but this is the pattern, right? That I'm seeing, right? When the hard creating thing is next, you find an adjacent technical thing that gives you a hit of I built something without the exposure of I shipped the thing that matters. And this was really eye-opening for me because yesterday, essentially, I did build something very cool when I should have been working on something more important and thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I just love building things. I'm just so good at it. And I'm telling myself this in my head when actually the pattern is I default to that behavior because I don't want to work on the big, bold, creative things. And then it pulls in my praxis angle, right? So this is my theme for the year. You literally chose building systems over doing the thing. And I felt really, really called out here, which is what I want. So essentially, because AI has all of this context, it is now able to really, now it's my focus coach, right? It's okay, here's what we actually have to do. So essentially what I asked it to do is from here. So I asked it to create a field note. So in my system, field notes are essentially things I'm observing. Okay. And you can see my field note is actually up here. Here it is, right? The productive procrastination trap. So all of this is actually captured in here. Right. And so from that brain dump, it's actually created something in Tana. It's kind of given me, here's why this happened. And then it's okay, here's actually how to protect today. Right. And so from here, I actually said, yeah, this is great. That pattern you identified is a light bulb moment for me. Can you add that in to the field note? And then I also asked it to add today's focus to the field on my day page. Right. So essentially what it did was up here, in my Tana, I've got today's focused, okay? And essentially this is Chad talking to me on my day page, right? Film the YouTube video, send it to me, finalize the day page workshop, no building, no rabbit holes, right? And so essentially what I'm saying is that once you start to get in this flow of giving Tana context, doing your weekly plan, that can get down to the daily plan, and it really does start to become a very, very useful tool for just that continuation of just what should we be working on? Sometimes what we need is somebody just to tell us, what am I supposed to be working on next? right? And not to have to make the decision ourselves. And so this is really how I'm using the MCP in Tana to really be a chief of staff, a co-pilot, somebody that works next to me all day to get things out of my head, to help me gather all those notes together, do brain dumps, organize stuff for me. It's really, really useful. So over the next few weeks, I'm going to be sharing even more workflows, going into depth on every single workflow that I've talked about here and others that I am just discovering all the time, because I think this is a real unlock and a way of using AI with our notes that feels to me like the future. So now you've got everything you need to get the Tana MCP set up and start working with your Tana workspace right from your existing AI tool. And now that AI can see your workspace, the question more and more becomes, what can I actually do with it? So if you want to know all the different things you can do with it, I break down the 5 GPTs I use every day to run my solo business in this video right here. And don't forget to check out Tana Fast Track if you want to turn your scattered notes into an all-in-one system that just works. And of course, for more content like this in your feed, like and subscribe to the channel.